American architect Cass Gilbert was born to parents Samuel and Elizabeth Wheeler Gilbert in Zanesville, Ohio on November 24, 1859. The Gilberts soon relocated to St. Paul, Minnesota, where Cass began his career in architecture at age 15 as an apprentice in the office of architect Abraham M. Radcliffe. Gilbert began studying architecture at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1878, where he was trained in historic and traditional architectural forms. He completed 1 year of the program before embarking on a grand tour of Europe, where he explored and sketched the picturesque countrysides of England, France, and Italy, a journey that inspired his future designs. After his tour, Gilbert arrived in New York in 1880 and was employed as a draftsman at the architectural firm McKim, Mead and White, serving as Stanford White's assistant. This provided an opportunity for him to hone his skills and learn the business side of architecture. In 1882, Gilbert moved back to St. Paul, Minnesota, to establish himself as an architect in a smaller market. Here you see his first residential design, his mother's house. He partnered with fellow architect James Knox Taylor to build residences, commercial buildings, and churches, which helped to shape the landscape of St. Paul. He also continued to work with McKim, Mead, and White on projects in the Midwest. After 6 years, Gilbert and Knox dissolved their partnership, and Gilbert set out on his own. Cass Gilbert used his connections, his persuasive skills, and his talents to win the competition and be selected to design the new state capitol building in St. Paul. Construction began on May 6, 1896. Gilbert's Renaissance Revival style building was constructed of white Georgia marble and St. Cloud granite. Gilbert's use of Georgia marble proved to be incredibly controversial. Politicians, quarry workers, and residents urged Gilbert to use local stone from Minnesota. However, Gilbert rebuked the notion because he said that the use of dark stone would make the building appear gloomy and forbidding. Gilbert won the battle, and the Georgian marble was used. The dome structure was derived after St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Hidden inside is a brick and steel supporting structure covered by a marble outer layer. The building was completed in 1905. It helped to garner national attention and catapult Gilbert's career. Gilbert and his family moved to New York City in 1899 when he opened his New York office. His next major project was the U.S. Custom House. When Gilbert's former partner, James Knox Taylor, was the supervising architect, he made a controversial decision to choose Gilbert's design. The design is a Beaux-Arts style building filled with symbolism. 4 monumental sculptures by Daniel Chess French that sit in the front of the building represent the continents: Africa, America, Asia, and Europe. The head of Mercury sits atop the Corinthian capitals of the columns, representing commerce. The shape of the building is a trapezoid, with the back being wider than the front. Although the Custom House was a success, the controversy that stemmed from it led to the 1913 repeal of the Tarsney Act, which allowed supervising architects to hire private firms. One of Gilbert's greatest legacies is the Woolworth Building in New York. The Woolworth Building was designed in 1910 in the style of Gothic architecture. Ornamental gargoyles, a cruciform lobby, a stained glass skylight, and mosaic tile ceilings that range from 11 to 20 feet high, and Tiffany elevator doors are among the unique characteristics of the structure. When completed in 1913, it stood as the tallest skyscraper in the world until it was dethroned by the Chrysler Building in 1930. Not only was it visually beautiful, but the groundbreaking technique of architectural engineering of a structural steel frame and masonry cladding that Gilbert designed became the standard model for years to come. Gilbert felt that libraries were cultural centers and designed them in a way that incorporates the city's architecture with the library as a civic centerpiece. In 1907, Gilbert was commissioned to build the Eves Memorial Library in New Haven, Connecticut. The Neo-Georgian style building was designed with brick and marble. Engaged marble columns and pilasters are central parts of the design. In a letter to a Library Commission member, Gilbert said that he wanted to, quote, preserve the proportions of spirit of the old architecture of New Haven, unquote. The St. Louis Central Library is one of the foremost landmarks in St. Louis. It was designed in the Beaux-Arts and Neoclassical style and was completed in 1912. The building is set on a raised terrace with granite steps leading to 3 large arched entryways. Once inside, a central pavilion is surrounded by 4 light courts. According to Gilbert, the first principle of library location and planning is accessibility. Direct access to the public to the point of distribution of books is of prime importance. Elmer E. Garnsey worked with Gilbert to design the interior, bringing aspects of Italian Renaissance, taking inspiration from the Pantheon and the Vatican. Gilbert also created a more modern version of Michelangelo's Laurentian Library ceiling. In 2012, the library underwent a restoration and renovation to incorporate the technological needs of the 21st century while also keeping true to Gilbert's design. The Detroit Public Library is a Beaux-Arts building which was designed around reading rooms and a central book delivery room, showcasing the importance of accessibility. The building has a second level with arcaded loggia, a barrel-vaulted hall with murals by Edwin H. Blashfield, and painted glass windows designed by Frederick J. Wiley. The design incorporates playful details like clay mosaics depicting Shakespeare to decorative pubic tiles that showcase famous characters from fairy tales. 2 additional wings were added from 1960 to 1963 and were designed by Cass Gilbert Jr. and Francis J. Keeley. Gilbert's last major project was the United States Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. Chief Justice William Howard Taft commissioned Gilbert to build the court under executive supervision by architect of the Capitol, David Lynn. Construction began in 1932. The building was designed to represent the dignity and importance of the Supreme Court. The classical Corinthian style was used to stay consistent with the styles of nearby congressional buildings. 16 marble columns lead to an oval plaza. Equal justice under law is incised on the architrave above the front entrance. Cass Gilbert died in 1934 at the age of 74 in Brockenhurst, England. The Supreme Court building was completed by Gilbert's son, Cass Gilbert Jr. Gilbert designed many other influential buildings around the country. Aside from his influence in his hometown, he also shaped the New York skyline with the Woolworth Building, the New York Life Insurance Building, the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and the Thurgood Marshall Courthouse. The University of Texas Library, Sutton Hall at the University of Texas, and the Arkansas State Capitol are also amongst his many influential works. Upon his death, the Times of London said, "A list of his most important buildings only would be long enough to prove him the most remarkable architect of his generation in America." Cass Gilbert lives on through his influence on the American skyline.